Jeanette Roche. This is Forum Daily West. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. Tensions rise in the Middle East between Israel and Iran, but President Trump won't say whether the U.S. could be drawn into the conflict. Plus, Canada renews diplomatic ties with India, but our spy agency says India is still a foreign interference threat. And heartbreak inside and outside the locker room as the Oilers lose another Stanley Cup final. Thanks so much for joining us. Tonight, we begin in the Middle East and the ongoing tensions between Israel and Iran. U.S. President Donald Trump is refusing to answer questions on whether he will order U.S. attacks on Iranian nuclear sites following similar attacks by Israel earlier this week. While speaking with reporters at the White House, he kept his cards very close to his chest.
I may do it, I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction, why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago? You could have done fine. You would have had a country. Nothing's finished until it's finished. You know, war is very complex. A lot of bad things can happen. A lot of turns are made. So I don't know. I wouldn't say that we won anything yet. I would say that we sure as hell made a lot of progress. And we'll see. The next week is going to be very big, maybe less than a week.
Iran's supreme leader has rejected U.S. calls for surrender in the face of continued Israeli strikes and warned that any military involvement by the U.S. could cause irreparable damage to them. The Associated Press' John Gambrell explains.
Iran is doubling down, saying that it must maintain its right to enrich uranium. That's even as the threat of U.S. airstrikes looms as this Israeli campaign targeting the country continues. We've heard from Iranian officials all the way up to Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, warning that America would face devastating attacks. That includes on military bases the Americans have in the region and business interests they maintain. However, the Israelis have continued their strikes on Iran that have taken out military leadership as well as nuclear sites. That includes a centrifuge manufacturing plants around Tehran today. Now, there are some sites that haven't been hit, like the underground facility at Fordow. That likely would need American bunker-busting bombs to reach, and the Israelis have been signaling they'd like to see the Americans involved in this campaign. There isn't really a sign for a diplomatic off-ramp to this right now, and the rhetoric from Tehran has been pretty intense. But the Israelis are feeling pretty confident. They've relaxed some of the restrictions back in Israel on life there, and that's due possibly because of the number of missiles that Iran is firing into Israel has really dropped in the last couple of days, suggesting that Israel may have been able to take out a lot of these launchers, that maybe the arsenal isn't really as available as it once was, and that the Iranians may be potentially holding some back in case of an American involvement in this conflict. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, is that the people of Tehran have voted with their feet. A lot of them have fled the capital city. Streets are empty there. Shops are closed. And those who remain are incredibly worried about what's going to happen next.
The Edmonton Oilers and their fans are scratching their heads today, trying to figure out what went wrong. The Florida Panthers won their second consecutive Stanley Cup, beating the Oilers 5-1 in Game 6. The Panthers won the best of 7, 4-2, and left the Oilers looking for answers.
Lost to a really good team. Nobody quit. Nobody keep fouling. They're a heck of a team. You know, the Stanley Cup champions back-to-back for a reason. They tilted the rink. They were able to kind of stay on top of us all over the place. Never really able to generate any momentum up the ice. You know, we kept trying the same thing over and over, just banging our heads against the wall. So still a lot of confidence and belief. You know, I think people thought we were going to make it this far. You know, we obviously believed. Just a short game.
In my opinion, I think it was just consistency. I think that was honestly it. They played a consistent game. They didn't change through the whole series. For sure, there's lessons. There's lessons as individuals, how you can show up better, how you can react better to certain situations. Also as a team, how we need to learn from this right away. We need to learn from this right now.
We'll be right back with more news from Forum Daily West. As leaders of Israel and Iran continue to attack each other with missiles, civilians pay a price. A Ukrainian makeup artist, Tatiana Kurakova, fled her native country in 2022 for Israel, thinking she'd arrived in a safer place. However, earlier on Sunday morning, an Iranian missile tore through the building next to hers, killing 9 people, injuring dozens, and destroying hundreds of homes, including Kurakova's. Here is her story.
Я розуміла, що прильот, але тоді я навіть не звернула увагу на цей дім, в який прилетіло, тому що я дуже швидко піднялася на другий етаж, там, де я живу, у свою квартиру. Я дуже швидко почала витаскувати чемодани, складати швидко свої речі, хоч якісь, тому що я розуміла, може бути зараз прильот, мені потрібно зібрати щось швидко, швидко, тому що я боялася, що зараз може завалитися дом, чи щось впасти, чи щось статися. Я боялась цього. Я думала, треба схопити швидко дуже свої документи, бумаги, якісь там важливі речі і біжати. Звісно, це нагадує мені війну. Мені навіть сни не перепиняють снитися, як я десь прячусь, як я бігу від якихось шахедів, бомб і десь шукаю укриття. І тому я вважаю, що моя психіка вже порушена. Що я відчуваю? Я відчуваю жах внутрі і снаружи. І я відчуваю жах від всієї ситуації безісходності. Ви розумієте? Це дуже жахливо. Це кожен раз, як останній раз, ти не розумієш, чи виживеш ти зараз, чи ні. Чи прилетить десь так, що вже тебе навіть не знайдуть. Це кожен раз стрес, це жах. Це та причина, по якій я виїхала з України. Я думала, що цього тут не почнеться. Я не розуміла, що це можливо і тут.
Terrifying situation. Canada's spy agency says India is a continued foreign interference threat. The Canadian Security Intelligence Service's latest annual report says Indian officials and their proxy agents in Canada engage in a range of activities that try to influence Canadian communities and politicians. It comes as Canada renews diplomatic ties with India after Prime Minister Mark Carney met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the G7 in Alberta Tuesday. Tensions between the nations heightened last year when the RCMP accused Modi's government of having a role in murder and extortion on Canadian soil. The Prime Minister's office says Mark Carney will engage with allies at the NATO summit next week to meet evolving threats in a divided world. Carney will be heading to Europe on Sunday for the summits on NATO and Canada-EU relations to talk trade and defense. He's likely to sign a defense procurement agreement with the continent, which will allow Canada to join a €150 billion European loan program for joint defense projects. That was the word from European Union leaders at the G7 summit in Alberta on a Tuesday. A 3-year-old Montreal girl missing since Sunday has been found alive on the side of a busy Ontario highway. Claire Bell was reported missing Sunday and had been the subject of an extensive search. Quebec Provincial Police say an Ontario police drone located her near St. Albert this afternoon. Police forces from both provinces are set to hold a joint news conference later today, but a Quebec police spokesperson says the girl was conscious and able to speak with officers when she was located. Her mother, 34-year-old Rachel Ella Todd, has been charged with child abandonment. Here in southern Alberta, a new buffalo hunt exhibit has been unveiled at Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. The site northwest of Fort Macleod is located on the traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy and invites visitors to connect with and gain a deeper understanding of Indigenous life and traditions. The exhibit is a partnership between the Piikani Nation, the Canadian Museum of History, and Alberta's government.
This World Heritage Site is a sacred place, a cultural bridge, and a living classroom. For over 6,000 years, this buffalo jump supported generations of Plains peoples, a testament to community, ingenuity, and survival. This exhibit brings those stories to life with honesty and care. It stands as an act of recognition, reminding young people, especially Indigenous youth, that their stories matter and their voices carry great strength.
When we return, we'll have more of the top stories from the West with Forum Daily West. Well, starting next Wednesday, June 25th, the Lethbridge Transit is making changes to bus routes around the city. The initiative seeks to improve connectivity for areas of increasing demand. Darwin Jewell, General Manager of Transit and Transportation, says $240,000 is the cost of making these changes.
The reason we're doing that is to try to keep these buses more on time. Which is exactly what customers want, is they want to know when that bus is going to be there on time. So a lot of the other changes are to create more reliable transit service. This has no impact to our operating budget because in the last 2 years we've had a budget surplus. So we're reinvesting that surplus back into transit, creating a bit of a improvement in transit service. And we're planning that in perpetuity with our current operating budget.
We've seen a dramatic increase in ridership over the past 4 years. Basically, our pre-pandemic boarding ridership was about 2.1 million. In 2024, we had just over 2 million boardings. During this time, we've modified the routes to better serve our customers. We know this change comes midweek, and in order to assist in notifying our customers that these changes are coming, we are going to have our transit customer service ambassadors out at the various stations.
The routes affected are the number 1 Gold, the number 2 Blue, the 4 Orange, the 51 Red Crow, West Highlands, Southgate, and 60C Stafford Drive. Most people that are familiar with the city of Lethbridge understand it has an important hub for agriculture, education, and commerce. But Lethbridge is now developing to become a national leader in a new industry, quantum computing. On Wednesday, Economic Development Lethbridge alongside SuperQ Quantum Computing announced the groundbreaking launch of Canada's first quantum super hub at the Tech Connect Innovation Facility. The new platform uses hybrid elements of CPU, AI, and quantum optimization to provide businesses, researchers, and entrepreneurs access to quantum computing tools to solve complex problems. By entering plain speech, the system can provide solutions to supply chain bottlenecks or manufacturing inefficiencies.
The quantum computing or the supercomputing happens in hardware that's not here, but this is an access terminal to those systems. And we are spinning up super hubs at targeted locations to provide access to strategic users, to evangelize the use of quantum and supercomputing in targeted sectors and targeted areas.
I think the industries that we have here are producing massive amounts of data. You know, when you think about agriculture alone, just in precision ag, in agri-food, agri-tech, we have manufacturing here, we've got supply chain, we have logistics. All of those have massive amounts of data that are often running into supply chain issues. We know with tariff, like how else do you calculate all of the impact that the tariffs might be happening on all parts of your operations. Now you have the ability to push all that data into one central place and maybe come up with some solutions you've never even thought of, pose the problem in ways that you've not been able to pose problems before, and see some results.
Businesses can begin exploring pilot projects this fall and have training provided through workshops and industry sessions. On Tuesday morning, Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services tackled a residential fire in North Lethbridge. Crews from 4 stations were dispatched at 7 a.m. to a house at the 1900 block of 6th Avenue North, where they encountered smoke and flames from the back end of the structure. They were quick to extinguish the fire before it could spread further. All residents were safely evacuated and no injuries were reported. Damages are estimated to exceed $250,000. And the investigation of the cause of the blaze continues. Lethbridge Family Services, or LFS, has announced a new program that offers a helping hand for newcomers. The Settlement and Community Support Services Initiative was reestablished in April of this year, and program coordinator Gregory Rebus says since then they've given assistance, referrals, and other support to more than 35 people.
So you come to the country, you have a lot of questions about what to do, how to navigate the system, and we're a free service. Questions about the permanent residence landscape. If you have questions about how to extend a work permit or what are the rules surrounding that, we can give you information and referrals about that. And also just getting involved with the community, learning what there is to do in Lethbridge, how to volunteer, how to practice your English. There's a lot of supports out there for people who come, for example, as permanent residents to Canada, but not very many supports, especially here in southern Alberta, for people who are temporary foreign workers or refugee claimants. Or maybe they hear from, friends and family, oh, you might want to do this, or maybe you could do that, but nobody is too sure. And so it's good to have a reliable source of information.